Hi there, welcome to my channel. I'm Andy the Suffolk Audiophile, and today we're talking about the 10 records that every audiophile should have in their collection. So, going back over the last few months, there's been a bit of a thing on YouTube going around the audiophile community of 10 records other collectors haven't got. And you know what, I'm not at that stage yet. I haven't got ultra rare records that there's only one copy of. But I thought it would be a bit of fun to do 10 records that, in my opinion, and it is only my opinion, 10 records that every record collector stroke audiophile should have in their collection as a starting point. You may or may not agree with all of these. Like I say, it's my opinion only. So without further ado, let's crack on with the rundown. So the first one is a good one, actually. So we've got the Beatles, Revolver. This is from the sort of the mid period between the lovable mop top phase and their more psychedelic Sgt. Pepper era. This is the bridge that crossed the two eras, and I think this has had more impact than probably any of their other releases. Certainly I think it's more of a crossover album than what Pepper was. You know, you still got the string quartets on this, but you've got two tracks on this which are sort of bringing in the dawn of psychedelia with She Said, and obviously Tomorrow Never Knows. This is the Mono 2014 reissue. It's an excellent copy, and unless you've been living under a rock for the last 4 weeks, you'll know that I think it's October, possibly November, they're releasing the Giles Martin remix of Revolver. So that's a good one to put down on your Christmas list. Okay, so yeah, Revolver, the Beatles. Next one is a personal favourite of mine. This goes back to when I was at school with a mate of mine, Tom, name checked again, Tom. And we both absolutely fell in love with this record when it came out. David Bowie, Scary Monsters. Again, this is the transitional album between the Berlin trilogy and the Let's Dance album. I think this is the only album at that point that he didn't tour. For some reason he didn't tour it. The standout on this album is Robert Fripp. Robert Fripp's guitar is all over this album, and it shows. The lead guitar in Scary Monsters, It's No Game, absolutely off the scale. I don't know what tuning Robert Fripp was using on his guitar. You know, he uses these weird and wonderful tunings that he makes up himself. It could be anything, God knows what he was doing, but the actual guitar parts on this album are off the chart. It's bookended by It's No Game, and then you get a reprise at the end of side 2. I think at this time this was at the this came out just as the futurist new romantic movement was getting going in the UK, and I think, as I said in my A to Z video, one of my A to Z videos, if you look back on that, this was in my A to Z, and I remember this being played in discos at the time. The DJs would play the whole album, you know, or the whole of side A. You know, it's just track after track, Up the Hill Backwards, Scary Monsters, Ashes to Ashes, Fashion. That's just side 1. You know, it's absolutely a corker of an album, and if it's not in your collection, you need to get it. Try and get a first pressing. They're not expensive. You can pick up a near mint first pressing off Discogs for about 20 quid, about the same amount of money you'd pay for a reissue. This is all analogue, the reissues are all digital. Okay, well, digital transfers, if you know what I mean. So yeah, Scary Monsters and Super Creeps, David Bowie. So next we have, if I do it in the right order, we have Transformer. Sorry about the glare, I've got them in poly sleeves. But Transformer, Lou Reed. Now, I'll be totally transparent, I was introduced to Lou Reed by a friend of mine, Tom, again, who introduced me to the Velvet Underground in the early 80s. And obviously the natural progression from the Velvet Underground was to seek out solo albums by Lou Reed. And the first one that I checked out was, I actually think the first album I checked out by Lou Reed was Rock and Roll Animal, but this was the second one. In the 80s I got a repress of it. I do believe Tom got a first pressing at the time. He got it off his brother, I think, can't remember. Anyway, this is the Speaker's Corner reissue. This is an all analogue pressing. I've listened to a dozen or so different pressings of Transformer, and the Speaker's Corner version by far is the best version you can get. It trounces over first pressings, it trounces over the current Lou Reed approved digital reissue, which is okay, but it's nowhere near as good as this. The bass on this rattles the windows. Herbie Flowers on this is the dominant part of the album. It's absolutely faultless. The production on this served the Speaker's Corner mastering process really well, and it is Lou Reed. Transformer, it says it's on Dynaflex, but it's not, obviously, because it's 180 gram vinyl. Dynaflex records are obviously very floppy, but this is as solid as a rock. It's dead quiet vinyl. If you really want to seek out the best version of Transformer, you won't go wrong getting the Speaker's Corner, and yeah, highly recommended. So that leads us on to the next one of the 10 records that you should have in your collection if you're a record collector or audiophile. And there's another Lou Reed one, Berlin. Now this was the follow-up album to Transformer. Didn't do as well as Transformer. It was a little bit Marmite with a lot of people, a lot of the journalists at the time, music journalists, didn't like it that much. There was an awful lot of people that loved it. I actually love this record. This is a first pressing on Dynaflex. I bought this from a seller in America, and it came to me in virtual mint condition. It cost me about $35, I think, plus shipping, I believe. This has been reissued by Music on Vinyl. I did contact Speaker's Corner to see if they were looking at getting the license to press it as an all analogue issue, and they said unfortunately no, it's been done by Music on Vinyl, so we're not going to touch it, which is unfortunate because the Music on Vinyl version is digital, but this is all analogue on Dynaflex. Now don't let the fact that it's Dynaflex put you off, because as you likely know, how heavy the record is, I mean look at that, how heavy the record is does not dictate the sound quality. And I can tell you now, the sound quality on this, we'll get it back in the sleeve, the sound quality on this is fantastic. This has got, what's his name on bass guitar? This has got Jack Bruce from Cream on bass guitar. It's got some standout musicians on it. One thing I didn't tell you, let me just go back to Transformer. Little known fact about Transformer. One of the drummers on Transformer is Barry Wom from the Ruttles. There you go. Fun facts to know and tell, you know. Yes, Barrington Womble from the Ruttles, the famous drummer from the Prefab Four, is actually one of the drummers on Transformer. His real name being John Halsey. But yeah, little known fact. Back to Berlin. Yeah, great album. It's a concept album. There is a gatefold version of this, but the gatefold version is the European, I think, French version. This is a proper US original pressing on the RCA label. As I said, on Dynaflex. It's a single jacket. There's no gatefold. I think it's got the picture in a sleeve. It's a great record. It's very you know, there's certain tracks, standout tracks on this. The Bed is really, really good. Kids gives me a headache every time I listen to it because of the screaming children. But you've got some great tracks on this. Yeah, it should be in your collection. If it isn't, there's something wrong. Okay, next one. Right, this was a no-brainer to me as one of the 10 albums that every audiophile or record collector should have in their collection. Now, you could either choose either this one, which is What Does Anything Mean, basically, by the Chameleons. If you're in the United States, you'll know them as the Chameleons, UK. But we just know them as the Chameleons. That's what it's got on the jacket, the Chameleons, and that's what they'll always be known as, the Chameleons. This is the repress, official repress, which was remastered at Abbey Road on clear vinyl. It's a double 33 1/3 version of it. This is a great record. This has got some of their standout tracks on it. Perfume Garden is brilliant. Return of the Roughnecks is brilliant. If you've never heard the Chameleons, you owe it to yourself. They are probably one of the best new wave post-punk bands to come out of the UK in the early 80s to never make it big. It's a travesty that this band never got to the heights that they were due. I think half the problem was in the mid to late 80s, Tony Fletcher, their manager, died, and the band sort of imploded from there on. I think there was also a little bit of internal bickering regarding the direction of the band at the time. I think, you know, a couple of the band wanted to sort of follow the money and move on to the next level up, but another couple of members of the band didn't. They wanted to remain fairly underground, if you like. So that was drawing a wedge between the band. But yeah, so honestly, you've got this one and Script of the Bridge, if you can find it. Script of the Bridge, let me find that. Script of the Bridge. There you go, Script of the Bridge. No, this is I think this is the single album, 33 1/3, but this is Script of the Bridge is the double 33 1/3 reissue. They're both absolutely brilliant albums. I'm going to use this as my thumbnail. That'll do. But yeah, if you get a chance to see the Chameleons live, they are touring at the moment with Mark Burgess on lead vocals and bass, and original guitarist Reg Smithies on guitar. They've got Reg back, and Reg was responsible also for all the artwork. Reg Smithies, their guitarist, is an artist as well, and he done all of their artwork on all their records, all their releases. He does the artwork. So yeah, the Chameleons, do yourself a favour, buy either one of these records, you won't regret it. They are an undiscovered gem of the UK indie scene. They really are. Then we move on to another record that every discerning record collector should have. I could have brought out the standard version of this, which I also have, but I thought, no, let's bring out the 3D version. Let's crack out the 3D version. This is, you can't really see it actually. Let me take it out of the jacket because here we go. There we go. There you go. There's the 3D cover, 3D Raven with original jacket. Now, this, alright, you could say Rattus Norvegicus, their first album, is brilliant, which it is. It's an absolutely brilliant album. But for me, Raven is just on another level. It's absolutely brilliant. You've got Genetics on here, Duchess, Shar Shara Go Go is excellent. The Raven's just a great track in itself. Baroque Bordello is hilarious. A Nuclear Device is just a brilliant track. This is the version with the withdrawn inner sleeve. This is a first pressing. I do have another version of this which is identical, except the other copy I've got is not 3D. it hasn't got the lenticular cover. So yeah, but that went back in fairly easy. But yeah, so the Stranglers Raven, if you want a first pressing of this in 3D, you won't get much change from about £60. I have no qualms in saying that this was given to me by someone in the audiophile community on Facebook. The story is I went to buy a copy of the 3D version on Discogs, paid the money, the guy sent me the record, but it wasn't the 3D version, it was a standard version, and I just posted a groan on Facebook on the Radar forum, I think it was. I just posted a bit of a rant on there about it, like people not advertising the records on Discogs properly, which is a real bugbear of mine, But when the record arrived, it wasn't the 3D version. Thankfully, he didn't overcharge me for it. He actually charged me the money that it was around about worth anyway for a standard version. So I kept it. I didn't send it back or anything. But a guy on the Radar forum contacted me and said, look, I've got a copy of that, an original in 3D. I don't play it. It's only been played twice and then filed away. He's obviously a proper record collector with a huge amount of records that he just tucked it away and didn't play it ever again. So he sent me this free of charge. He wouldn't even let me pay the postage. He just asked for my address. I offered him the postage and a drink, or to pay the price for it, and he didn't want it. He just sent me the record, and I kid you not, when this arrived, it was like new. It was absolutely pristine, so I'm really grateful to have that, really lucky to have it in my collection. But yeah, the Raven, the Stranglers. We're getting near the end now. Now this record is a must for any discerning audiophiles, not on its sound quality though, and that is the Velvet Underground and Nico, or as we call it, the Banana album or the Warhol album. So this came out in 1967. First pressings of this are absolutely stupid. You need a second mortgage for them. Mono versions are even worse. If you can get an original pressing without the peeled, with the banana still intact, because you can peel these off, with the Eric Emerson back, you're talking a couple of $1,000. But this is not audiophile quality. It was not recorded to be audiophile quality, but it is an important album that I think everyone should have, because it shows the way towards punk and indie and what happened in the early 80s. And the Velvet Underground, they weren't big at the time, but they were sort of put on the map a little bit by David Bowie in the early 70s, when Bowie produced Transformer by Lou Reed. And by the mid-70s, they started getting a bit of kudos from other musicians and other bands, and getting a bit more recognition, And by the early 80s, everyone was about the Velvet Underground and how much of an influence they were, And they were like the first grunge garage band, really, if you like. Like I say, this album is not for the faint of heart. The production on it is absolutely atrocious. It's not brilliant. It's certainly not high fidelity, but it's got character, and it is historical of a period in time, and it's a piece of history that only ever happened once, and there's never been another band like them. This album stands out really as probably the forerunner of bands like Jesus and Mary Chain. And bands like that, you really, if you're into those bands, you've really got to go back to the Velvets. This one, or White Light, White Heat, but this is the one that really you should have in your collection. Next one, and we're still on the post-punk type thing, and we're looking at Joy Division. I recently done a shootout video on this. This is my original first pressing. Joy Division, great band, but if you're going to buy one album of theirs, their debut album, Unknown Pleasures, is up there as probably one of the best debut albums ever. You've got other great debut albums, but nothing like Unknown Pleasures. You know, when you look at the history of Joy Division and where they came from in Manchester, with Warsaw and the punk thing, you know, and you listen to those early punk recordings that Joy Division did, and then you listen to their debut album, it's like two different bands, two totally different bands, and that's, I think, it is obviously all down to Martin Hannett and his production. Martin Hannett firmly held the reins on the recording of this album, and the band just followed on his shirt tails at the time and done as he said, and the end result was Unknown Pleasures. You can look at Unknown Pleasures as a bit of Martin Hannett flexing his production muscles and just doing what he wanted, really, without anyone saying, no, I don't want you to do that, because the band at that time was so naive. They didn't understand, and they didn't really, you know, they didn't have the balls to say, no, I don't like that, Martin. He was so very, very forthright in what he wanted. And yeah, and Unknown Pleasures is a definite, it should be in your collection. If it's not, you know, you need to get closer as well. Okay, but yeah, Unknown Pleasures, Joy Division. Let me change in the tune slightly. And if you're into jazz, you know, there's a handful of records that you should have in your collection. One of the ones at the top of the tree of this is this Miles Davis, Kinda Blue. This is the original master recording by Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab, now famously known as a DSD transfer. Up until now, we always thought this was an analog pressing, but it's not, it's DSD. But this is a box set, this is numbered. My number is 25,130. I wonder when they're going to stop numbering them. I bought this as a brand spanking new pressing, still sealed off of a seller on Discogs. I can't blame the seller for this issue, but when I got the records, both of them slightly warped. I think that might have been where it had been in storage for quite a while. I mean, this is a 2015 pressing, and I bought this a couple of years ago. It's still sealed. But yeah, so this is an absolutely brilliant record. If you've never heard a jazz album before, this is the one you need to listen to. It's the tracks on it are quite long. I mean, side one, this is 45 RPM. This is a double disc 45 RPM version of it, on super quiet vinyl. I mean, you can't really go wrong with this. This ain't cheap. Mobile Fidelity is still selling this, and it's around about £60 or £70. If you get it on the secondary market when MoFi are not selling it, you won't get much change out of about £90 to £100. You know, but I bought this when the price was good. But yeah, Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs, Kind of Blue, Miles Davis. There's two versions of this. You've got Analog Productions done a version of this as well, which is all analog. So if you really want an all analog version of it, get the Analog Productions UHQR version of it. But this is really, really good. The two versions, this and the Analog Productions version, I've not heard the Analog Productions all the way through, but what I have heard, it's really good. They're both really, really good. Just slightly different listening experiences. That's all I'd say. You know, they're both good, but in different ways. Okay? But yeah, Miles Davis, A Kind of Blue. Right. So we're getting to the last. And I was a bit undecided what record to bring out. This is the last of my top 10 records that you should own if you're a collector or an audiophile. And I was going to bring out Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd. This is the 30th anniversary version, so it's got an extra wraparound poster on the front. But this isn't my favourite Pink Floyd album. So I was thinking, you know, is this list going to be a generalised records you should have, or should I inject a bit of, well, actually, I think you should have this one. And the one that I think you should have is this one. Now, this is not everyone's cup of tea. This came out in 1977. It was at the height of the punk explosion in the UK. And this was probably the heaviest and most aggressive album Pink Floyd done, and I think it might have been that way for a number of reasons. One, obviously they were battling against the punk thing. You know, the Sex Pistols famously had "I Hate Pink Floyd" t-shirts on that they wore at the time. This is really, I think, is better. They're both brilliant albums, don't get me wrong. I love Dark Side of the Moon. I think it's a great album. It's a landmark album. The production on it is fantastic, and it still to this day sounds brilliant, and it's a great record to test equipment on and test new gear out on. You'll get a good transparent reproduction. But this, for all its faults, is a brilliant record. You've got a new remix of this coming out in October this year, and it's going to be great, I'm sure. I've heard the remix of Dogs on YouTube or on Floyd's YouTube channel. It's good. It's like they've lifted the veil off of the recording, and it's exposed parts of the recording you didn't hear before. This was recorded at their newly built, at the time, Britannia Road Studios in London, in Islington. They also co-produced it. Now, it was engineered by, I can't remember who it was engineered by now, but it was produced by Pink Floyd. And I think the reason this sounds so bad, which it does, it's not the best sounding Floyd album by any stretch of the imagination, is because they were in a new studio they'd not used before, and they'd done it themselves. And I honestly think that this was a learning curve for them in production. And for that reason, it sort of lacked that sparkle and the clarity that maybe Wish You Were Here had, and Dark Side of the Moon. And what came after, the Wall. I mean, don't forget, this is the only album that they recorded totally at Britannia Road. James Guthrie, I think, has done a fantastic job in lifting the veil of this record. The 5.1 mix, I'll be interested to hear that, even though I haven't got a 5.1 system. I might have to do something about that when that record comes out. But yeah, Animals, Pink Floyd. This is by far my favourite Pink Floyd album. I think it should be in everyone's collection, along with Dark Side of the Moon. And, you know, I think this has got probably some of David Gilmour's best guitar solos on it. The guitar solos in Dogs alone is worth its entry fee. The guitar solo at the end of Pigs, 3 different ones, again brilliant. There isn't an actual solo in Sheep, but what a track! I mean, the guitar in that is just fantastic, absolutely fantastic. The whole album's great, really, but for many years it really needed cleaning up and reproducing, if you like. And I think James Guthrie's done that. Now, what I've heard so far, like I say, sounds really good. So I'll be interested to hear the rest of the album when it comes out. Obviously, you're not going to get the full impact of the recording on YouTube. You're not really going to get much out of that. So I'll be interested to hear what it's going to be like on my system when I get the record in October, I think it is. But Dark Side of the Moon is still up there. It should be in your collection as well, really. This, as I say, this is the 30th anniversary version. This was released with stickers and an extra poster. But this is, interestingly, the last time that the record was ever remastered and cut from the original tapes. This is probably the last time you're ever going to, last chance saloon that you're going to get to buy this all analogue. All the subsequent copies of this have been digital, and a lot of the prior copies of this were digital. They went back to the original master tape to cut this. They remastered it, they cut it, and the lacquers were cut from the tape, and that is what this is. This is going for quite a lot of money at the moment. I didn't pay that for it. I bought this sealed, brand new, you know, for a really good price. You won't get much change from about £120 for this now in a sealed condition. But yeah, that is my top 10 records that you should own. But I do have an addendum to that. There's a couple of records that you know, I spoke about with friends, and I've spoke about briefly to some other collectors on the internet, and I just wanted to bring these up. The Diagram Brothers. You know, there's probably a lot of collectors out there that haven't got this. So maybe I have got a record that no one else has got. This is on New Hormones label, and this was New Hormones was the Buzzcocks label, I believe. These were from Manchester. The Diagram Brothers were a band that were heavily influenced by XTC. If you like XTC, you may like these. They're quirky. They are very guitar orientated, but their music is very discordant. You know, they're the only band I know that can play out of tune and sound in tune. Go figure. But I loved the album, and you know, the tracks on this, I'll give you a flavour of what the tracks are called. Right, so Those Men in White Coats. My Bad Chest Feels Much Better Now. Seals / Fur Coats. It's a bit of a protest song, I think. Put It in a Bigger Box. Words from Major. Here Come the Visitors. And one of the best tracks on the album, Isn't It Interesting How Neutron Bombs Work? The USP for this band were to write songs with very literal lyrics, you know. So they wrote a single, they released a single called Bricks, where all the lyrics were just about bricks, how they're made and what they're made of and what they're used for. Instead of writing love songs, they went out and they wrote songs about bricks, Morris miners and neutron bombs. It's a great record. It's difficult to get hold of now, but if you can get a pristine near mint version of it, you'll pay about £30 or £40 for this on the secondary market. The sleeve is actually that way, but it was printed that way. It's meant to be like that. It's that way round when it's on the shelf, but because the actual slot is there to put your record in and out, but it's actually that way round. It's weird, very strange. And the second one is the second sort of add-on. And I'm going to do this, it's a bit of a shout out to someone that I've never met personally, but I chat to him occasionally on Facebook. And he plays keyboards for this band, Steve Walker. And that is Modern English. Now, this album came out in the early 80s. They were from Colchester in Essex. So shout out to Colchester. I'm from Romford in Essex, so I'm sort of from the same area. I currently live about half an hour from Colchester. Now, this album, if it isn't in your collection, if you're into post-punk new wave, you need to buy this. Now, you probably heard their famous single, I'll Melt For You, which was a pop song off of their follow-up album to this, After the Snow. After the Snow is such a departure from this record, it's untrue. They're like chalk and cheese. This record is like a cross between Joy Division and Bauhaus on steroids. It's a class album, it's cracking, and this was actually mastered, probably from DSD, but this was mastered by Kevin Gray. This is the, who's it by? Coherent Audio. Can't see who it is. Oh god, I can't see who it's by now. But DPR, Drastic Plastic Records, that's it. It's not written on the hype sticker, but yeah, this was reissued by Drastic Plastic Records. This is on green vinyl. This was limited to 500 units on green vinyl, when they done a black vinyl version which was limited to 1,000. I got this through Amazon of all places. It cost me £30 at the time. Got it brand new when it came out. The original pressings of this go for about £50-60 on black vinyl. But yeah, if you like post-punk new wave, I'm just showing this, want to promote the band. I think they're a great band. I've seen them live a couple of times. Steve's a lovely guy. He also sells stuff on Discogs. I've bought a couple of records off of him over the past year or so. You know, he's a really good guy, plays for a great band. I know Gary McDowell's been ill lately, and I hope he's getting better. I hope to go and see them next time they're touring the UK. I think they're playing the US at the moment, but if you get a chance to go and see them, go see them. They're really, really good. They tend to play a lot of the older stuff. They play a lot off of this album. You know, this was originally released on the 4AD label, and like I say, it's dark. It's quite heavy in parts. It's like Joy Division and Bauhaus, but a more sort of aggressive version of it. Yeah, modern English. Check them out if you've never listened to them, or if all you've heard is After the Snow and I'll Melt With You. Check this out. Honestly, you owe it to yourself. If all you've heard is their later stuff, which was more radio friendly, let's say, you need to listen to this. This is absolutely brilliant. Okay, and that is it for today. I've got a couple of new videos that I'm working on over the next couple of weeks. I might have a week off next week. It depends. Depends what happens. I've got a few things going on in my life at the moment which I need to concentrate on. But that being said, I've always got time for records. So on that note, I'll catch you later. Click like and subscribe and the thumbs up button and all that jazz. And I shall see you next time. Cheers. Bye bye.